The government's own figures, you point out that bracket creep issue. By the government's own figures that were provided just before Anthony Albanese spoke at the press club, it said $23 billion in extra revenue will actually go into government coffers because nothing is being done about that bracket creep. Indeed, because of these changes, it's going to get worse. But I look at you can call it political expediency. The government would call it immediate cost of living relief. But what about your electorate, David? I mean, 99% of people are going to benefit from these changes, aren't they? Is this just a vote winner? And how do you argue with that?
Well, just to remember that those people in my electorate, many of which who are on much of the lower end of the scale in wages, did already get a tax cut. They've had the two initial tax cuts were targeted at them. This was about making sure that the aspiration of those, particularly I've got people out in my electorate as well, tradies, who have kids at school and mums at home looking after some of the kids, and they're getting caught up in this. And it's all relative. Their mortgages are still up there, their cost of living's still there, and they're only on $180,000, $190,000, and that's still not a lot in this day and age. And what we're saying is that the reforms that were put in place were the final stages of giving everyone a fair go and making sure that we had a better tax system that didn't have this inflationary creep in tax that we are seeing, and in fact won't even go to actually help in any meaningful way the disposable incomes of Australians. It's about $15 a week compared to what's been lost, about $153. So why wouldn't you have left the taxation reform instead of pitting one Australian against the other because of their job, and said, well, if there's pressures, let's look at where those pressures are. Let's have temporary targeted relief at those measures, rather than actually having this class warfare that Labor's brought in. He's already divided the country in the voice. Did he have to do it again? And I just think there was better ways to do this, but still, there's no ideas about actually how structurally he's going to address those drivers of particularly your food price and your energy bill. Chris Bowen's finally had an epiphany that we might need more supply of gas after 2 years of demonising the gas industry, who've gone overseas rather than stay here, and realised, well, we might need some supply because increased supply reduces price. I mean, this is ideology that didn't meet the practical reality of what's being bled out of Australians' wallets. And unfortunately, we've all paid the price. So we need to not only understand that we do need some temporary and targeted measures, don't walk away from tax reform, but look also at the structural adjustments that need to happen about making sure we have sensible energy policy, as well as food. The supermarkets, we've been screaming at them for years about the supermarkets. He's finally got on board there, but there's other measures within the food that we need an ag visa to make sure we can get supply up, because we haven't got the workforce. They're taking away 450 gigalitres of water away from the consumptive pool out of agriculture. That means less supply, increased prices. They're going to tax our farmers to actually bring in the foreign competitors' product to pay for their biosecurity costs, $153 million. So consumers will have to pay for that as well. So this is where we actually need sound policy that's for the greater good.
Well, that's right. Well, you're giving us a laundry list there, so lots to consider. But if we stick on tax reform, I mean, you can't really call the already legislated stage 3 tax cuts from your side of politics wide-scale tax reform. What's going to matter at the next election is the alternative your side of politics offer. So do you concede that you'll have to go to the election, not just a promise to reinstate your old policy? You're going to have to come up with something new, aren't you?
Well, let me just go back. This is wholesale tax reform that was in 3 stages. The first 2 were delivered. So this was the 3rd stage of that wholesale tax reform that the coalition put in place, and in fact the Labor Party supported the last election. That was seen as the sensible policy about making sure this taxation inflation is kept under control, and that aspirational Australians have a red-hot crack and not be taxed for having a red-hot go.
No, but David,
so what we'll do is obviously
that it's a pretty hard argument. Are you saying that you'll go to the election saying that, you'll pull that tax cut away?
No, I haven't finished that, but I haven't finished. I'll answer it, but I had to think it's very important that I rectified your statement, because this is part of 3 stages. 2 have already been delivered. Now, obviously, what we'll do is we've had the same values and principles we took to the last election about reducing people's taxation. We believe it's better in their pockets than in the government's, and we'll obviously go to the next election with a taxation policy that looks to address the bracket creep challenges we've got. And obviously, I think what Anthony Albanese should do is actually go back to the Parliament that was elected by the Australian people, that asked for all 3 stages of those tax reforms to be implemented. Let's see where that goes. If that's knocked in Parliament, then if Anthony Albanese puts up his alternative, then we'll work through that. If that gets through, then obviously we'll use that as a starting point to take to the Australian people about the reforms that we'll build on that, to try and make sure that it's a fairer tax system for everybody, that takes into account aspirations for somebody wanting to have a go without the taxman being in their pocket, and making sure that we stick to those principles. We delivered on that. Instead, we've got Labor now talking about negative gearing, a retirees tax. I mean, they're getting more into your pocket. We want to get out of it. And that's the important difference that you'll see at the next election. And we'll announce that as we get closer to the election.